Can you hear me? All right. I'd like to call the Camarillo Board of Library Trustees meeting to order for September 28th. And the flag salute, would Ms. Santangelo, would you be so kind as to lead us tonight?
Hand over heart. Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the approval of the agenda. Are there any public comments for the Library Commission tonight? All right, that moves us down to consent item, which is 2 items. There's a motion and a second. No one made the motion. I'm not sure about the second, but did you hear, Chris?
Ms. Santangelo made the second.
Okay, very good. So the motion is second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, please vote. Okay, that passes 5-0 unanimously. We don't have any discussion items tonight, and we don't have a report. Oral communication, we don't really have anything on oral communication. So with that, we're going to adjourn.
I'll call a meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District Board to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Director Kildee?
Here.
Director Mulchay?
Present.
Director Tremblay? Secretary Santangelo?
Here.
And Chair Craven?
Here. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes anybody would like? I will take that as an approval. Public comments. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board of the Camarillo Sanitary District on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward and not having any cards, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
I'll second.
The motion by Mr. Tremblay, second by Ms. Santangelo. Please vote. Assuming, okay, he's got his thumb up, so it's a unanimous vote of approval. Are there any oral communications? Okay, no CASA conferences coming up, so there's not much to report or to announce. With that, we will be adjourned.
I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Camarillo City Council. I'll let the record reflect that all council members are present. Approval of the agenda. Any amendments to this agenda? No, I will have one right after consent calendar. We have an individual here from VCTC who wants to give us a quick update, and so I'm going to take their public comment right after consent. Aside from that, we'll move on to consent calendar.
Move the approval.
I have a motion and a second. Let the record reflect that I am going to abstain from item F, as I did last meeting during its discussion. I have the individual at this address is a former client of mine, so I'm going to abstain. I have a clear conflict of interest, so I'm going to abstain from F. All right, otherwise we have a motion and a second. Please vote. That passes unanimously. It'll get us down to what I had mentioned earlier. We have Darren Pescia here with the VCTC. He'll give us a quick update. And your mic should be on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for letting me speak this evening. I'm Darren Pescia. I'm from the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and I'm just here to share a little bit of information about a new program that VCTC has started in coordination with all of the regional transit operators. We're calling it the Youth Ride Free program. And what it is it's a new program that allows any youth age 18 or younger to ride any public transit bus for free in Ventura County. VCTC applied for and received a grant over the summer to launch this program. And as I mentioned, we are doing it in coordination with all of the regional operators in the county. It started September 1st, and we're very excited about it. And that's kind of the program in a nutshell. I do have some flyers that I can share if anyone would like some. And you can also get some more information on our website, which is goventura.org/youth. And I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Mr. Kildee?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. That's really good news. Is that a year program? Is that in the fiscal year? Or how is it?
Yes, basically through the next 2 school years is the intention of the program. It is a pilot program. We're kind of advertising it right now as a 1-year program because it is based on grant funding, and sort of it depends on the success of the program and how much it's used. But its intention is to be a 2-year pilot program.
Good. Yeah, well, let's hope it's successful. Yes.
Mrs. Craven?
How does this differ from the previous program that they had for?
So we do have a college ride program that is for students who are enrolled at any of Ventura County's colleges. So that's our second program. We haven't had one for other age groups.
Okay.
But I will mention, since we're talking about college ride, that we just recently also extended that program to include students who are enrolled at UCSB and Santa Barbara City College.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. If you have those flyers, you can, oh, yeah, Mr. Tremblay? Yep, go ahead, go ahead.
Aaron, thanks for being here this evening. Just brief us very quickly relative to funding, in terms of grant funding or LC top funding, the sources of funding, because this is a great program, this youth ride. Sorry, I'll turn on my mic here. I mean, this is a great program.
No, now you turned it off.
Okay. Hey, there we go. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, could you just give us a quick brief on the funding for this program, because it's a wonderful program.
Sure. The funding is from a program, it's called the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. It's LC TOP. It is state-funded, and it's part of the state's cap and trade program. And so the funding is intended to go towards programs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's a great program. And my editorial comment, I've been very fortunate this year to chair VCTC. And during the course of that, I get to work with exceptionally good staff, including Ms. Peshka, who is basically a governmental relations guru. Is that a good approach? I don't think that's the exact job title, but it comes close.
It's close.
But we really are blessed to have a wonderful VCTC staff. So I want to thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you very much. No, good. Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, and I do have flyers if anyone would like some.
If you give those to Christy, our city clerk, she'll make sure we get those passed out to each of us, too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to get down to item P under public hearings, ordinance to amend and restate Camarillo Municipal Code in regards to ADUs. How you doing?
Hi. Hello, Mayor Molche and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I've recently come on board as a senior planner in the Community Development Department, and it's my pleasure to present a zoning ordinance amendment for ADUs to you tonight. So a little bit of background. The state substantially revised ADU regulations on January 1st, 2020. The City Attorney's Office prepared an ordinance to amend and restate Chapter 19.56 and presented it at a City Council study session on February 12, 2020. Staff submitted the draft ordinance to HCD for review and incorporated their suggested revisions. On May 5th, 2020, the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council of the proposed ordinance. The City Council approved ordinance number 1173 on May 27, 2020, and directed staff to send the ordinance to HCD for their formal review. So HCD required a few revisions of us. On January 29th, the city received a letter from HCD requiring 2 revisions to the ordinance in order to be consistent with state ADU law. So number 1, that ADUs are permitted in any district where single-family or multifamily dwellings are a permitted use, and on any legal lot with an existing or proposed single-family or multifamily dwelling. The second change removed the requirement of the property owner to certify on an annual basis that the property owner is occupying the primary residence or the JADU. On May 3rd, 2022, the staff presented an overview of the proposed amendment to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission unanimously adopted a resolution recommending approval of the proposed ordinance to the City Council. This proposed ordinance is exempt from CEQA and requires no further review. And staff's recommendation is to introduce the ordinance for a first reading, amending and restating Chapter 19.56 of the Camarillo Municipal Code. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. I didn't catch your name.
James Fowler.
James, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Gildy?
Question and kind of a comment, timeline. So it was up in the state for over a year almost a year and a half for them to get around to telling us basically what we needed to do to be in compliance. Is that fair?
That's correct. And specifically for this sort of review, they don't have a specific timeline they have to get back to us by. So again, with this, it could be some time before we hear back from them, but we are confident in these changes.
Okay, so that's somewhat standard procedure then?
Yes.
If there is a standard, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions before I open the public hearing? Oh, Susan, questions? Mr. Tremblay?
James, thanks, and welcome aboard. I was curious whether whether there'd been an internal discussion on this. In the June 29, 2021 letter from HCD, and I'm looking at page 1 of that letter, and it's attached to our agenda, and it's the discussion relative to permitted zones. And HCD said specifically, and I'm going to quote, "The ordinance should not list allowable zones, because doing so risks excluding, whether by intention or inadvertently, other zones that allow single-family and multifamily development." And it goes on to say, instead, the ordinance should note. It does not say shall. It says should. And I'm very cognizant of our requirements relative to ADU and needing to follow state law, et cetera. But was there any discussion at the staff level about the concept of should versus shall, and whether or not we in fact have to amend our ordinance to comply with a letter where the language is discretionary?
Thank you, Councilmember Tremblay. I'll field that question because I was here.
Thanks, Dave.
Sorry. We not only did have conversations among the staff level, we actually questioned that with HCD staff, and they said must. So we did that.
Well, they certainly have a curious way of articulating it in a letter to
I
us.
agree. And they further required us to actually put this in as a program into our housing element.
Right, I recall that. So, okay, so they said, we didn't mean that, we meant must.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Santangelo?
I just wanted to recap this for anybody watching or not understanding sort of what happened. This wasn't a change to an ordinance that the council asked for, right? This was state law. We had to change the ordinance. We did, and they didn't like what we did, so now we're fixing it again.
That's correct.
Thanks.
All right. With that, this is a public hearing, so let me open up the public hearing. And did we have any any public comment? No? Is anyone here would like to make a comment in regard to this item? I don't see anyone rushing up. So I'm going to close the public hearing and then look to my colleagues for discussion.
I have a comment. And my comment is going to pretty much be what it was a couple of years ago when we looked at this before. First of all, I don't like the state coming in and telling us exactly what we have to do in every zone. I think that that's taking away local control, and it's not taking it away little bit by little bit, it's taking away local control a whole lot by a whole lot. It has taken away the single-family zone. If anybody would like to see what this looks like, drive by East Lemon at Beverly. There is a 1,000-square-foot, two-story house going up behind an 1,100 or 1,200-square-foot house. The lot isn't that long, that big. I don't think they're on city sewers. They're not. They're across the street across the street from the city. I mean, Beverly is split at that point because that house is on Lemon. Its sides on Beverly. And they might have connected to sewers, but if they're on septic, I have always been wondering how the county allowed it. I didn't think you could have a residence over your septic system. So anyway, I just think that in the long run, we can't require parking for all of these residences. I think in the long run, it's going to really deteriorate our neighborhoods. And that's just my opinion. But I will vote for it because it's a state law. That doesn't mean I have to like it, I just feel I need to vote for it.
Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, I don't want to echo Councilmember Craven's comments in all my years that I've been up here. And it's not just this council, but all the previous councils that I've had have worked extremely hard for a balanced community and a community that looks like our community does. It did not come easily or in happenstance. It was a heavy pull and a heavy push, and it continues to be. And for the state to come down and say what they're saying and, basically dictate to us what we have to do, I think is most unfortunate. So I agree with what Mrs. Craven has said, and I know she and I know all the rest of us here will continue to fight for what we feel is a very, pleasant community that we have, and we'll do the best we can with what we have to do. But it's going to be a heavy push and a lot of work, but we'll be up to the task. So those are my comments.
Mr. Kildee? Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Tremblay? You're Mr. Kildee.
That Mr. Killed.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, to me, obviously, and I know housing is extremely important. We have a housing shortage. Affordable housing is extremely important. That said, this is the continuing, and Ms. Santangelo is absolutely correct. This was in order to conform with state law, and we have to do it. But that doesn't mean, as Mrs. Craven said, we have to like it. To me, this is a continuing assault on local control based on this incessant one-size-fits-all mentality that afflicts the California legislature. It just permeates the legislature. And they continue to drop these bills, SB 9, it's an entire litany. And we've had them in this session, including 2011 and other bills, AB 2011 and other bills. It's interesting to me that HCD staff says, oh, we didn't mean should, we meant shall. But there's no authority for that. Yet they take the position, wait a minute, we're going to reject this unless you put this particular language in. And the real issue here, to me, is from a local control standpoint, on the one hand, the state requires us to go through an entire planning process and a community workshop process and gain all this and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And we're real good about obtaining community input. And then, on the other hand, the state turns around and says, no, these are the kind of bill, this is a one-size-fits-all approach that we want you to undertake. That's just not appropriate from a policy standpoint. So now that I've gotten that off my chest and editorialized on that, I'll vote to support this. But again, as Mrs. Craven said, I don't have to like it. But I recognize fully that it's in order to comply with state law. I wish more of the state legislators had local government experience. And they don't, and that's unfortunate. So, thank you.
I essentially agree with everything that's been said. There was an editorial in the Acorn a few weeks ago, if anybody saw it, titled Pro-Housing but Not Pro-Housing Bills. And there's a paragraph I want to read from it. The city spends months, if not years, carefully crafting land use policy, meeting with residents, talking to businesses, holding hearings, only to have the state pass a one-size-fits-all rule for every jurisdiction in California. It's maddening. I think that sums it up really well, and I agree with that. It's utterly frustrating, as Mr. Tremblay said, to spend time and energy and the expertise of our staff that are really working hard to appreciate that there is a housing crisis and we have to do our part. And as a city, I believe we are. And it feels like we're being punished for cities and jurisdictions that aren't. And that's frustrating. So I will be voting for this because it's state law, but I don't want to. So.
I won't add too much more than what's already been said, aside from saying that a community should reflect the wishes and the character of its residents, and not the wishes and the character of someone 600 miles away. All right. With that, I'm going to request a reading of the title of the ordinance.
This is ordinance 2001, appropriately numbered, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, California, amending and restating Chapter 19.56, accessory dwelling units of the Camarillo Municipal Code.
I'll move to waive further reading and introduce.
All right, I have a motion.
Wouldn't put
and
my name on anything like that.
a motion and a reluctant second. All in favor, please vote. All right, that reluctantly passes 5-0. All right. With that, we'll go to item Q, online permitting and workflow software.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Mulchay and council members. In a continual effort to enhance customer service and in direct alignment with the City Council goal and objective to aggressively implement the city's adopted Economic Development Strategic Plan, the city has been exploring options to streamline the city's permitting and workflow processes. We are looking for ways to streamline our process to make it more efficient, to ensure consistency in permit processing, to automate our workflows and have a standard mechanism for tracking permits. We need to build more transparency into our process, and all in the name of excellent customer service. We began reviewing software programs back in October of 2021, researching 5 different permitting platforms over a 3-month period. Our internal team recognized that the functionality of the OpenGov platform exceeded the others we reviewed by far. So in February of this year, the executive team had received a demonstration of the program. What we soon realized is that this effort is more than just purchasing a new software program and installing the program on city computers. This is essentially changing the way that we do business. So to that end, we have spent the last 23 weeks engaging an internal team representing 5 different city divisions who are all involved in permit processing. We've had 22 internal meetings, and we've created 12 different workflows that take a permit from start to finish through the entire permitting process. So we're now at a point where we plan to bring OpenGov on to have them help us carry through the remainder of this process. There's still a lot of things that need to be done. We need to build efficiencies into our current workflows. We need to train staff on use of the program. We need to assess our software currently, look into purchasing new software and installing that software to make sure that this platform will function properly. We need to ensure that payments can be made through the system to allow for ease by applicants. So all of this needs to happen internally before we can publicly launch this software to the public. And of course, as we communicate this process to the public, we will be ready with public-facing roadmaps to better explain our permit process and be ready to help guide the public through the use of this system. So again, this is more than just purchasing a software program, plugging it in and pressing go. There have been a lot of moving parts to get to the point where we are today. There's still a lot of parts that are in motion. Things stretch across multiple city departments, and it is going to require training and continual communication to get this up and running. But we want to assure you that staff is committed to making this shift, which is why we've been working toward this day for many months. We're really excited for what it represents because it does represent that we're moving forward. We are planning on making this a priority to get this up and running to the public in the next 9 to 12 months. So it is staff's request and recommendation this evening for you to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with OpenGov to utilize their Citizen Services Suite for online permitting software. And with that, the recommendation is before you, and unless you have any questions, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much, and we'll start with Ms. Craven.
Yes. Is it anticipated when this is launched that members of the public would still be able to come to City Hall to obtain a permit or to apply for a permit? Or will it be required that they do it online?
It is, and the goal is ultimately to get everyone to input their permits into this online system. So of course, in the interim, when we get everything up and running, we will be available at City Hall to help folks who come into the building get their permit into the system. But there will be a transition period.
There'll be a transition period, but then at some point, we're going to require that people do it online? Is that what you're saying? I'm not
Yes.
understanding.
Yes, so that is the ultimate goal. So obviously, when we initially launched this, next summer is our target, so 9 to 12 months from now. The expectation at that point in time is not that, day one when we launch, that everybody will be required to submit it electronically, but that is the ultimate goal, that ultimately will help transition our community to electronic submittal.
Okay.
Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the cost. The annual amount, as I understand, is $170,422. Let's say $170,000. And there's a one-time deployment fee of about $75,000, let's say $76,000. So I'm thinking that's about $245,000, $246,000. And then it says a not to exceed $416,000. Is that money that we've already spent to implement this?
It's money that we've already budgeted for. So we initially entered into a contract with OpenGov in 2019, budgeting out for 5 years. So we're actually right at the 3-year mark of that OpenGov contract, and this is projecting to move forward for the next 2 years, filling in the gap with this particular suite, with the money that's been budgeted for OpenGov.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Will we monitor this and how effective this is going to be too, and how many people are going to use it vis-a-vis how many people prefer just to come in to hear and meet face-to-face?
Absolutely.
So the $170,000 is a yearly subscription rate to this. Is that right?
Yes, there is an annual subscription for it.
Okay, so is that, having not known a whole lot about this, is that pretty much a standard rate for people that do this kind of work, about $170,000 a year?
It
For
is.
the program?
Yes, it is.
That's a lot of money. Is that what it is? I mean, you went out, you talked to at least 5 other that provide this kind of services, and that's kind of where this stuff is.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I need to massage this a little bit. It's a lot of money, and I'm hopeful that it'll be successful. I guess we won't know until we implement it, but I certainly think that we need to monitor on a year-by-year basis and see, and maybe it'd be fabulously successful, and that'd be great. But I'm hoping that staff this first year will monitor this and see to make sure that we get, enough service for the money that we're paying for it. Those are my questions and a comment, so. All right.
Additional questions? Susan?
Michelle, can you go into a little bit more detail about how this helps streamline things, or how it changes the efficiency?
Absolutely. So some of the stats that we've received from OpenGov's perspective are the expected return on investment is about 50 to 75% reduction in permit processing time. There's also a reduction, they estimate 50 to 80% of less walk-ins and phone calls because the information is more accessible. And everything is consistent and standardized in the program. So it allows for more automation, both on the public's end when they're submitting an application, and then also a workflow process on the staff end, so that anyone can go into the program and find out exactly where a permit is, what the expected, time is for turnaround when they can receive comments. And all of that information is readily accessible to everyone internally. So we can better communicate that to the public if there's an inquiry.
Thank you.
Mr. Tremblay?
Thanks. Michelle, with regard to Mr. Kildee's question, so for example, on the 170,000, and I think you got to this in your response to Ms. Santangelo, there is going to be some savings on the staff expense side relative to changing the efficiency for staff, correct?
Correct.
So you have a situation where we're paying additional funds for the software, but on the other hand, we'll have a concomitant reduction in expense on the staff cost side, correct?
Yes.
So in other words, there'll be payment, but there will be a concomitant savings as well. Is that a fair way to look at it? At least eventually when it's all up, when it's all up and running.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of comments, but that was the only question that I had. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll wait for public comment.
All right, I got a few questions of my own. Michelle, what other cities, say, at least in the county, have moved to a purely kind of digital-only acceptance format for when it comes to permitting, what we're suggesting here?
So Port Hueneme recently signed on for this exact suite with OpenGov for the online citizen services suite. They have a lot of other Southern California cities that use the platform, slightly outside of Ventura County. But just to name a few, Cypress, Lomita, Buena Park, Desert Hot Springs, and then Sonoma and Benicia, which are up in Northern California. So they are national. They have a lot of cities that utilize this platform, so we're certainly not the first.
So I have to assume that, and being, so you'll, when it comes to permitting, you'll have obviously industry professionals, contractors, in addition to homeowners coming in and being kind of in that industry. I know there is a whole smorgasbord, there's a whole different levels of people's when it comes to their computer literacy and ability to grasp technology. It's something that we deal with inside my own company. As we transition. To Ms. Craven's question, if Mary Jo comes up off the street and she's trying to get a permit for something, she wants to put a shed in her yard, and she doesn't know two licks about how the internet works, or she doesn't have a smartphone or a computer for that matter, how would we assist her in filing for that permit?
Absolutely. So we're still going to be answering the phone. We're still going to have our public counter staffed. What we're going to be doing between now and then, which we've already started, is really training our staff on how to use the program. So we need to then have our staff train our community on how to use it, recognizing that there's people at all different levels, homeowners versus developers, who are going to be coming in for a wide range of permits. And what we've been doing over the last 23 weeks by convening this internal team is getting all of the divisions together who are involved in every step of the permit process and writing down each step that each division takes and putting those steps into a workflow. Those workflows are going to be incorporated and built into the OpenGov system, but we are also using that as, we're turning that into a public-facing roadmap, which doesn't have all of the steps, but has the simplified steps to walk anyone, no matter what their level of expertise is in permits, through the process start to finish, so they can see where they are today and what steps they're going to need to go through until the end. So customer service is not going to shift from in-person communication or telephone or email communication just to a database. There's still going to be that human interface. We're still going to be having conversations with our community to help them through this. But this is just going to increase efficiencies on both ends to take those permits through the process in a lot more streamlined fashion.
So to be really clear, if someone walks in with a piece of paper, we're not going to put up a wall and just say, sorry, we can't help you because you got to file that online.
No,
Okay.
we can't do that. So we'll guide them through it at the counter. So another part of assessing our software needs, may include something in our lobby, a public-facing electronic portal that we will have available for situations like that. If a community member comes in with that piece of paper, we can walk them through the system in that portal. I mean, right now, it would be at a counter at our desk, and we can do that. But all of that assessment of those needs for equipment and stations that will need to be put up in City Hall is all part of this next 9 to 12-month process.
I agree with Mr. Kildee's comment that it seems like a lot of money, because I think it is a lot of money. To that end, and to complement Ms. Santangelo's question, have we established certain KPIs, key performance indicators, or means by which to measure if this is and to what extent this is successful, whether we are moving the needle in the areas that we want to move them, whether it's cost savings, speed of process, making the process more enjoyable, to whatever extent it can be enjoyable to file permits. But have we established those measurements, ways to measure it, and seeing, and I'm all for pushing things forward, but if something's not working the way we anticipated working, then yeah, I'll have to be prepared to just cut bait and run and just say, hey, this is not working, this is not being effective by the way we want, as opposed, rather than simply double down and spend extra money on something that's not being effective to the way we want it and expect it to be. Do we have a way to measure that effectiveness?
Absolutely,
And
and we need
we
to,
will?
and that's going to be part of that initial conversation with OpenGov, because we've been focusing our time so far on getting our workflows, written down, so we know exactly what we plan to build into that system. They're going to come on board and help us identify best practices and efficiencies, and also help us, identify those metrics by which we can measure. And one thing I should have mentioned earlier, in response to Mr. Kildee's question, if you don't mind, Mayor, is that annual amount, that 170, it's actually, we're entering into a new contract with OpenGov, because we already are in a contract with them for financial transparency and Open City Hall, and another service which wasn't working for us. It wasn't working the way that we had intended. So this new contract is keeping financial transparency and Open City Hall, but essentially replacing that module that just wasn't working with this online permitting system. So all of that together amounts to that 170. So the financial transparency and reporting is actually $54,000 a year, and then this online permitting software is $116 a year. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
You did.
Thank you.
Well, I have one last question, but it'll probably come to me during comments, because I'm being forgetful this evening. Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, just a little follow-up. So can we expect that 170,000 roughly, will that be continuous from year to year, or will there be escalators on that, or do we know?
At this point, that's what it will be for the next 2 years.
2 years, until that current contract comes up for renewal then,
Correct.
correct? And that's 2 years from now?
2 years from now.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Ms. Santangelo?
I just want to make sure I understand. So the 170,000 and change is for the new module and what we have existing already with OpenGov?
Yes, it's the entirety of all of the modules under the OpenGov
Okay.
program.
Gotcha, thanks.
My last question came to me, so if you don't mind. Every few years, we undertake a process to where we do an internal evaluation of the time and effort and resources that go into processing a whole slew of different permits. Is one, the savings that we hope to achieve here, and then also in addition to the costs that we're going to incur, are those going to get wrapped into that process and spread amongst those different, the pricing of all those respective permits, should we expect? Because wouldn't this be a cost of processing, would it not? I'm seeing a...
Yes, I think to answer your question, I think we are going to be processing. Michelle, do you have any specific examples of that?
I don't at the top of my head.
But the short of it is, yes, whatever savings that we incur through efficiencies will be reflected in this, I think is it every 2 or 3 years? How often do we do it?
Years permit fees.
Every 2 years? But then also whatever costs, so if there's a net savings or a net cost, whatever that is, that'll be spread out. We should expect that to be applied to that whole pricing schematic, whatever you want to call it, yes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr.
we
Tremblay, I
would
think you had a
include
comment
that.
as well. Yeah.
I was going to save that for one of my couple of editorial comments, but it's absolutely, I'm really glad that you brought it up because it's right on point. When you said earlier, Michelle, that the expected ROI is about 50 to 75% reduction in expense and permit processing fee. On the other side, we've got, and staff and the consultants worked really hard on those rates, and we increased those rates quite a bit a year or two ago, and that was reflective of the current system in place, which is now going to be changed. And legally, we have to provide a nexus, a reasonable nexus between the cost of supplying those services and what folks, businesses, and residents pay. So this is not, I guess what I'm saying is that's an entire back-end obligation and a second obligation coming out of this. We're going to have to undertake that identification as well. And I guess the challenge for us is going to be, or the challenge for staff is going to be, giving this a chance to work so that we can identify what those cost reductions are in terms of ROI, and then moving to change the permitting fees, because we did a large increase in fees, and we don't want to overcharge businesses and individuals for coming in to put a permit, place a permit. So this is one side of the coin. That's the other side of the coin that we need to take care of. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I was just going to editorialize on it, but you put it in the form of a question. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Any additional comments or editorials?
I have a comment.
Okay. Yeah, Mr.
Ready?
Gildy?
My hope and my expectation is for staff to make sure that the council is aware on cost reduction, about how much people are using this. I think this program is only as good as the level of the amount of people that uses it. I'm not singling anybody out here. I'm just talking about one council member who want to see some quantifiable data so we can make our conscientious decisions about our rates that we charge businesses and other fees and structures here. This could be extremely successful, or it could be marginally successful. I don't know. I know that online and automation is coming. I'm happy that my colleagues up here brought up the fact that if John Smith comes up to the table here with an idea that there's going to be a staff member that can talk to him about, or her, about this. I think that's incredibly important here. It's a lot of money. It is the future. I totally understand that, but I'm really implore staff to let council members know the success of this program, if not on a quarterly basis, at least twice a year, so we'll have some idea about whether or not we're getting the proper amount, of action for the money that we're spending here. So I don't want to get long-winded on this. I know there's a lot of other cities that are doing this. I'll be following it. My hope is that it'll be successful. I really do. I hope it'll be successful here. But again, my hope too is that we're not forcing people that don't necessarily want to use this program to use it. That we've been known as an outstanding customer service city for the most part, and I'm certainly hopeful that that'll remain that way. And this will be a big part of it, is whether or not there's going to be somebody at the counter that can answer the necessary questions. So those are my comments.
Ms. Santanza?
I'm supportive of this. It is a lot of money, but I see it as an investment. And I see it, and when we talk about looking at the indicators to see if this is successful, yes, I'm concerned about the cost, but I'm also looking at other things. I'm looking at the benefit of somebody being able to check online at any point in time at midnight if they'd like to, because they can access this online. I think people are expecting that our technology advances, and I think a lot of people will be happy that we're moving to a system like this. And I'm confident, equally confident in our staff and what you've talked about, Michelle, in the transition and keeping that high level of customer service. And I don't have any doubt that our city staff can do that and make sure that the people that aren't as comfortable with this system are helped and are educated in whatever they need, whatever support they need to use the system. So I'm supportive of this, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it supports our economic development plan, as you've stated, and that is to do things faster and to do things more efficiently. So if this helps our businesses as well, then I'm all for it. So thank you.
Mrs. Craven?
My concern is for the individual, not necessarily a company. They will have people who will get used to pulling their permits for roofing or whatever online. And a lot of homeowners will do that too. But there are other people who have an idea of what they want to do. They come in currently, and I know this is the way it goes, because at any of our properties, if anything's done, we get a permit. And my husband will come in and talk to them, and building and safety is really good about helping people modify what it is they want to do, so that at the end of the time, when it's inspected, it's going to be legal. And sometimes the individual homeowner or person doesn't have that same thing in mind because he doesn't know what all of the legalities are. So when I asked you earlier, is somebody, after this is fully implemented, going to be able to come in? I got the answer, no. We're going to be fully automated. So my concern is for the individual, not necessarily a company like yours. And I've heard a lot of talk about we're still going to have people talking, but that wasn't the answer I got. So I've got two different things that's going on up here. And when it does get fully automated, I hope there will still be somebody at the counter who will be able to talk to, especially the individual homeowner.
Mr. Tremblay, any comments?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So let's kind of distill this. First of all, I'm supportive of this. I agree with much of what our vice mayor said. This is an investment. I think that's absolutely correct. I also think it's a natural fit for us in terms of our OpenGov, Open City Hall platform, our financial transparency. And I want to give kudos to staff because it's taken us 23 weeks to get to this point, and we've got a long road ahead in terms of implementing it, provided that we go ahead and pass it. I also recognize that I think this is absolutely consistent with our economic development strategic plan and with the implementation of that. And I know Mr. Winkler, who's sitting out in the audience, spends a great deal of his day, as many of you do, implementing it. I think there are four primary concerns that I've heard. The first is this transitional period when we're educating the public, we're moving toward this. But it's not just the transitional period. Mrs. Craven's point is really important because even after there's even after it's fully automated, we are going to have some folks, perhaps not a whole lot, but some, that are going to come in that will not be conversant in how to do this. And we need to have staff available to help them. And so there, and I think we need to recognize that. You mentioned, Michelle, we will have some like public-facing portals, and the way I interpret that is, we are going to have some laptops or some desktops out in the lobby with staff available to help people, and that should continue to be the case even after we go fully automated, because there are going to be those occasions, and I hope we don't lose sight of that. I think it's extremely important. The second is, and apologies for being redundant, we need to revisit, you're going to have to look at the second side of this coin. I think the return on investment that you articulated, that number is ambitious. I don't know whether we get there or not, but on the same, assume that you have those kinds of savings effectuated. On the other hand, we've got permit fees that are still pretty high. So we're going to have to spend some time, and it's just as important to make sure that our fee structure is correct. And I would anticipate that our fees are going to go down, not up, based on this. But we'll have to see, because it's based on the amount of the software, it's based on everything that comes in. And that calculation was that, goodness, I don't remember, a couple 100-page report, that the rate analysts did. But legally, we have to have a nexus. So that's going to be an important key part of this. The third is the mayor's comment on key performance indicators. I absolutely agree with that. It's important that we do that, and it's not just the best practices. It is the metrics by which council will be able to assess whether or not this is being successful. And the fourth point is, I agree with Mr. Kildee wholeheartedly. It's really important to give the council data on the success of this, so we can analyze what is going on. I mean, I think Mr. Winkler will get a lot of input from businesses, particularly when we're out implementing the Economic Development Strategic Plan. The city has a reputation for good customer service. Building and Safety has a reputation for good customer service, and they're good about helping people, and we're going to need to continue that, but we need to have that data. So I'm just trying to sum up the 4 points that I'm hearing and to emphasize their importance in this. So, but I do support what we're trying to do, and we'll see where this goes. I mean, it's a natural fit, and it's an investment in the future, and I like where we're going, but we've got a lot of work, obviously a lot of work to do to effectuate it.
And I'll just echo a few things that have already been said, that I do support this. I think it is an investment in the future, in both improving our services. I think it will usher in a level of convenience. There will be efficiencies gained, and hopefully in both time, savings of both time and money, both on both sides of that counter, for both the person who would otherwise be having to walk in, who could easily just do it online from their computer, and obviously from our, from staff, from the staff side. Hopefully we can continue to improve the level of service, build upon the great level of service that the city already provides, and now we can do it even greater. But certainly I agree with Mr. Craven too. We can't eliminate the human element. We can't eliminate, unfortunately, changes like this they're multi-generational. So we'll continue to assist those professionals, contractors, developers, homeowners who are walking in, and they need that personalized service. They need to talk to a person. They need that assistance in person. But for those who can, are apt, and want and willing to do it online, then we will absolutely continue to work to push them towards that and achieving those efficiencies and those savings. So I will support this. I'll entertain a motion at this point. I have a motion from Mr. Tremblay. Second. Second from Ms. Santangelo. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. All right, we got plenty of time. On to oral communications. And I will start Mr. Kildee, you mind if we start with you?
Yeah, okay. Meetings attended, September 27th, an investment committee meeting and a finance committee meeting with Mrs. Craven. And my hope is that we'll adjourn tonight in the memory of ex-council member Don Wunsch. I could certainly make some comments at the appropriate time. Also, from a personal point of view, I have a dear friend of mine, Dave McDonald, that's in the hospital. He's going to have a heart transplant tonight at 9:45, so I'm going to be thinking a lot of him for the rest of the meeting here. Also, at some point, I wonder if I'd personally like to get an update on the street slurry seal program. We don't necessarily have to do it tonight, but maybe we could get an update on, how the process and how far along. I believe they're pretty much finished right now, but maybe at some point we could get an update on that program. So with that, I got done. I think that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to skip around. I'm going to go Mr. Tremblay again.
Okay. This is a different pattern. Or maybe it's more random. All right. I'm just teasing. All right. Meetings attended. I had a first in-person board meeting of the Metrolink Board of Directors in Los Angeles last week. So we had a workshop back in December, still socially distanced, but this was the first full meeting of the Metrolink Board at the Metro headquarters. So that was great. Yesterday, September 27th, Mrs. Craven and I read to toddlers at the Camarillo Library. Mrs. Craven and I want you to know, I'm very proud of this, we are referred to as the A-Team. So there's a challenge that goes out to all of you in terms of reading to toddlers at the Camarillo Library. We had a great time. That's my own self-anointed description of the A-Team. And we've done it before, and we have a very good time, huh?
Every year that's been held, we've done it together.
We've done it together, so we certainly have enjoyed that. Today we had a policy committee meeting in the morning with Mrs. Craven. 5 items I want to talk about, try to get through a little briefly. The first one is on Camarillo Airport, and a couple of comments, and I want to compliment my colleagues who sit on the Airport Authority, because I know you spend a lot of time on this, but I learned a few new things. How about that? Learned a few new things this week that I wanted to pass on. First of all, I had a noise or a operating hours complaint come to me over the weekend, and I was able to get a hold of Keith Freitas the day before yesterday, and there was an immediate response from him. And it was about a jet that had left the airport at, I think, 2:34 a.m. A week or two ago. And so the resident wanted to know, well, gee, what's going on? And so we had a discussion. I had a discussion with Keith about how the enforcement is supposed to work in that instance, and I found out a few things. First of all, if it's a based tenant, then typically a letter would go out from the Department of Airports to that tenant saying, wait a minute, you can't do this. And there are some exceptions. If it, for example, it's a life flight, like a medical flight or a military jet, although that wouldn't be very common at Camarillo Airport, except maybe during an air show. So there are those exceptions, but a letter would go to the pilot, and then there's a lot of peer pressure, I think, among the pilots. Don't do this. You need to comply with those operating hours restrictions and the noise restrictions, and they're published for the pilots. And they just completed a new pilot guide for pilots' use. I asked whether or not there was a specific FAA administrative process relative to pilots' licenses. So if somebody just thumbed their nose at the restrictions and said, I'm not going to comply with it, is there any remedy through FAA? And the bottom line answer is no, there's really not. But that said, fortunately, there have not been many complaints that have been provided at least that's my understanding, to the airports. I also learned from him that they've hired a new communications and engagement manager, a new PIO, and her focus is on noise in the community, so I welcome that. What I thought was really interesting is the Department of Airports has, my understanding is they have purchased a new aircraft flight tracking system, and they are beta testing it now, and that should be available for all of us in the public to use by the end of the year. So you can, someone could actually track that 2:34 a.m. flight and go, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I know that you've received the airport Department of Airports has received new grants for noise studies, both with respect to Camarillo as well as Oxnard airports, and the Camarillo study is supposed to begin in the first part of 2023. So I don't want to steal thunder from my colleagues who sit on the Airport Authority, and I really appreciate all the time that you spend on it, but I do want to give a shout out to our new airports director, Mr. Freitas. I think it is a sea change in improvement from his predecessor in terms of credibility and transparency and responsiveness. So I really appreciate it. So that's on the airport side. The second is with respect to the city business license tax. I had a situation come up this week where I became aware of a situation where in essence you have an owner-occupied building where the owner leases back to his or her own businesses, and those businesses pay business tax or business license tax. But then under our current ordinance, which has not been updated for many, many, many years, that situation apparently still calls for the owner of the building in that circumstance to pay a license fee, even though the businesses that are operating, the owner's businesses that are operating in that building also pay a fee. So it's as if I were to purchase a one-story small office building just big enough to hold a law office, lease it to myself as a professional corporation, for example, pay all the business license tax, and then pay another tax on top of that, which doesn't seem fair to me. It seems like a double hit. So I have discussed this with city staff. I know they're already working on updating this ordinance with respect to other matters, and I think they will be bringing it to either the Finance Committee in the future or one of the committees in the future. So anyway, and I know that they are cognizant of this situation too. So it's something from a policy standpoint I think we need to address. The next is the Drought Task Force. I wasn't able to participate in that today because we had a policy committee meeting, but in front of you are handouts, and thank you to Ms. Buckstemper for giving you all hard copies of this. But just very briefly, as of September 27th, you will see that with regard to, and this is with regard to the volumetric allocations that MET is tracking relative to, the once-a-week irrigation and whether or not we're ultimately going to go to zero as of November, hopefully not. I'm looking for wood to knock on. All state water project dependent agencies within MET, performance in September is 25% under the allocation target, which is good news, and from June to December, 8% under. The individual member agencies, including Callegas and Las Virgenes, for example, are over that. I also note that the city of Camarillo, as of several days ago, was, as of September 22, we were 6% under the targets, which is good news. Camarosa was 43% over, which is not as good news. But again, the whole idea, as I understand it, that Metropolitan will be looking at this within the context of not looking at specific member agencies of MET, but how all the state water project dependent agencies of MET did overall in this. So anyway, from an overall standpoint, we're in relatively, the news is good, but we still need to conserve where we can, and goodness knows we've had this discussion, and I've gone on at length about the issues attendant to it, which I won't bore you with tonight. But in any event, that's the update on that. Next is with respect to Clean Power Alliance, and Susan, thanks for all the time I know you spend on that, on the Clean Power Alliance Board and on the Executive Committee. It's truly appreciated. But just to remind everybody out there, and I think everybody got this postcard in the mail, that as of October 1, our rate change is going from, it's going to the 100% default tier. And There are folks out there who may wish to opt out or opt down. And just please make sure that you look at this postcard. You can go to cleanpoweralliance.org, or you can call 888, let's see if this number, I got the number right, 888-585-3788 with respect to that, if in fact you wish to opt down. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, since it is still baseball season, still, I was informed yesterday by a Leisure Village resident, I didn't realize this, but we're all been following Aaron Judge and his home run record setting season for the Yankees. I think he's at 60 right now, unless he hit another one today. But Aaron's parents, his father was a 1972 graduate from Camarillo High School. Wayne Judge, and he was on the 1972 Camarillo High School CIF basketball team that won the CIF state championship, and he had to miss his 50th class reunion in Camarillo last week because he was on home run watch. So I thought that was a pretty good local angle that I was not aware of. So best of luck to Aaron Judge and to his family, and I thought having that local angle was kind of cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Santangelo?
Okay, for meetings attended September 16th, the Economic Development and Land Use Committee. I attended via Zoom. On September 17th, I attended the coastal cleanup. I went to both locations. I only picked up trash at one location, though. There was a lot less trash this time. Or maybe I didn't look hard enough. But there were a lot of people out there. It was really nice to see a lot of people coming out to clean up our own community. And then that afternoon, I went to the Pleasant Valley Historical Society Don and Donya's barbecue, which was very nice. On the 21st, I was at the CPA Executive Committee meeting. On the 23rd, I was at CSUCI for the investiture of Dr. Rich Lau, which was a really, really lovely celebration and ceremony. Just so well done and so honoring of our land and our diversity and the Chumash land and the Chumash traditions. It was just really well done. On the 24th, I stopped by Coppers and Choppers, and the greatest thing about that was the command center had air conditioning, and it was really hot, so I was in there for a while. And then earlier today, I had a CPA Finance Committee meeting. And just to comment about Mr. Freitas, he is a breath of fresh air for what's going on at the airport, and so I appreciate you agreeing with that, with your experience speaking to him. He's been pretty responsive to us when we've had other concerns about noise. And I'm really confident that what he's doing with the study and hiring the new PIO that can really work with the community and work with people who are questioning what's happening at the airport. So it's a really, it's a good thing. So that's all I have.
Yep.
I forgot to add one thing, and that is, Mr. Kildee, I really appreciate you asking that we adjourn our meeting in memory of Don Wanch. I had the privilege of knowing Don and his wife Katie for many years, and he was his service to the council was just extraordinary, and I'm so sad about his passing. He's a great council member, and so I really appreciate you bringing that up tonight. I think it's really appropriate that we adjourn in his memory. So thanks for letting me add that on.
Absolutely. Meetings attended for me before we move on to Mrs. Craven. September 15th, Economic Development Collaborative, or the EDC VC board meeting. September 16th, oh no, I take it back. September 15th, I also attended the AWA member and policymakers reception. Last year, we were the recipient of the Water Leadership Award. This year, it was Henry Gromlich with Callegas MWD. I know Tony knows,
knows Henry. Henry's been around for a very long time, I think.
Everybody knows him, I think.
Everyone, if you know water, you know Henry, I guess. September 16th, Economic Development and Land Use Committee with the Vice Mayor. September 20th, AWA Water Issues Committee. September 22nd, I also did story time at the library. I would like to contest your A-team. Yeah, I got up and I
Well,
did.
how many
I-
were there? You got to have more than one
It
to
was-
have a team.
It was, well, I am a, yeah, you're right, there's no
We're
I,
a team.
there's no
We're
I
the
in team.
A-team.
I guess I'm I-team, but I got up and I did the welcome clap dance and then
So did we?
oh, all right.
And the goodbye song?
Yep, did the goodbye song and everything. Wheels on the bus? Yeah. I did all the moving and grooving. In a suit nonetheless. It was weird, but I didn't know I was going to be doing that much moving. Now I've lost my thought. I'm so obsessed with story time. September 23rd, I also attended the C2CI presidential investiture of Dr. Richard Yao. That was a really nice event. September 25th, attended this was in Ventura, but the Ventura County EV Showcase. Got to show off all the electric cars. So I got to show off my electric car, and it's had about 50 different participants, each showing off all their different cars, which is actually really cool. Had about 400 people kind of come on by, and we were just there to answer questions. You know, here's our car, we answer questions. What do you get? You know, how much does it cost? What's your mileage? What about range anxiety? And you know, how do you charge it and all this other stuff? So that was really informative. That was really fun. That's it for events. 2 comments, or a question and a comment. Echo Director Freitas, breath of fresh air. He does give, in regards to operations outside of the operating hours at the airport, he does give us a report, a monthly report. I know he sends it to our city manager. I get a copy of it as well. I've asked him to send me a copy of it. So every month, he gives us a report. Here are the planes, here are the operations, here's what time and day they occurred at. And he says he wants to be transparent. He wants to show that, you know, yes, we have these issues, but I'm working on them and what he did with each of those instances. So there is some transparency there and communication there. That is greatly, greatly appreciated, and something we did not have before. I did have a question, staff. I'm not sure if you can answer it now. Kind of putting you on the spot. I was looking for an update on the bike lanes along Pleasant Valley Road from Lewis to Las Posas. It was something we discussed, gosh, in depth maybe 3 years ago. I know there was some grant funds that we had procured explicitly for its purpose, and I just don't know where we're at with it. I'm not sure if we can get an update. Can I put someone on the spot? Yep.
Good evening, Mayor Moshe and council members. My name is James Campero. I'm the Deputy Director, Managing our Capital Project. So in regards to the Pleasant Valley Bike Lanes Project, we're submitting we do have federal funds, as you had mentioned. So the state actually goes dark during their federal fiscal year, which is September to October. So we're submitting, getting ready, the plans and specs for the most part finalized. So just submitting that funding request to Caltrans for the federal funds. So before we can actually proceed with advertising for bids, that we need to get that first approval. And so we're in the process of submitting the request for authorization to the Caltrans, which is through FHWA. It goes through Caltrans. But they go dark during their federal fiscal year. They don't accept any applications until they've finished rolling over essentially their federal fiscal year.
But the messiest part, I think, was either land acquisition or was easements we were pursuing. That's all been settled?
So that has, yeah. We, based on the design, there was no right-of-way acquisition necessary. So we were able to bypass, I guess, that issue.
Good, okay.
And then while I'm up here, I don't know if you want me to proceed, but I know there was also a question in regards to the slurry seal.
Yes.
I can answer that if you
Sure.
would like.
Please.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Councilmember Kildy. So in regards to the current slurry seal, we've completed the work. They're actually in the process of doing punch lists, we call them. So those are essentially little items, little irregularities, or any items that, let's say there was a car and it was unable to move. And so we're coming back to catch up those specific spots. But so in general, the slurry seal, this year's slurry seal, is for the most part complete. So now we're just wrapping up the final items, and we'll be coming back for the notice of completion in the next month or so. And then in regards to the next, so because the annual paving project, we essentially start and we finish one, and then we really have to start getting ready on the next one, which actually starts even prior to the completion of the current one. So I think it's also good news that the upcoming annual paving project is going to be in the Old Town area, which has its challenges just because of the nature of Old Town areas. So we're currently working on the design for the Old Town area as well. And we'll have to be finalizing those, getting it ready to advertise so that we'll be prepared to go to construction for that project for next summer.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do agree, closing in the memory of Don Watch. I only had the honor to meet Don maybe one or twice. I knew of him, and he's given a lot to Camarillo, he's given a lot to this country. So, more than appropriate. Mrs. Craven?
Meetings attended. On the 27th, I attended the Investment and Finance Committee meeting, and on the 28th, the Policy Committee meeting. That was this morning. This afternoon, I don't know if I got confused or if the Contract Cities bunch got confused. There was supposed to have been a legislative committee meeting. I got a notice of the meeting. After that, I got a notice it was canceled. So I didn't bother to do anything until Veronica called and said, "Are you coming to the meeting?" I didn't attend the meeting, so I thought I'd let you know. I played hooky. You send me a notice of cancellation, and I believe it. Man, that thing's off on my calendar. Anyway, I didn't attend a lot of the things that some of you attended over the end of last week and the weekend because I was at my 60th high school reunion in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and enjoyed it very much and didn't think much about the city or committees or anything else. I neglected to ask this, so if somebody can get back to us later, I'm just wondering, how much longer do we have to have all this plexiglass up? I mean, you go someplace and you sit on an airplane and you're elbow to elbow, and here we're probably 4 feet, 3 feet apart, and we still got plexiglass. So, and on an airplane, you don't need a mask, so I don't know. I don't know what rules the state has that the federal doesn't, but the federal doesn't consider it a problem anymore, and I'm just asking. And obviously, it seems to me we ought to get them down pretty soon. Another question I have that I neglected to ask earlier, so maybe somebody can get back to us, but I've been concerned about how long that sidewalk right across from City Hall along Carmen will be closed to the public. And I know that it's because there's a dangerous situation created by the tree and the fencing at Lakeside Village, but they are creating a great inconvenience to the public, and it just seems to me that at some point, I don't know if they're waiting for several bids to come in so they can proceed and get that tree down and get that fence out of there so it isn't a dangerous situation, or if they're dragging their heels. But it really seems to me like that needs to be moved along because the sidewalk's been closed at least 2 months. I thought it was all summer long, but it's been closed a long time, and it just seems to me that it needs to be moved on. So that's a comment I have, and I don't know that I need an answer now, but I would like an answer sometime as to whether we're doing anything or whether they're moving along with it. As far as the airport, Mr. Freitas did talk to RDP 21 at its last meeting. He told us pretty much what he told you. They can have a recommendation for hours, but they cannot fine somebody if they leave at a different time. And I have 3 times been at Burbank since we started talking about this, since he first came and talked to us. And I noticed that when you fly in, there's a sign and it says recommended hours for takeoffs and landings, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., but it doesn't say that is required. So that's all I have for that. And the history lesson tonight is a little deviation from real history, but I thought I'd give everybody a little taste of my sense of humor and things that have come in to the city council or the mayor's office that are in my, what I call, weird letters and happenings at city council file. One letter started, "The most important task facing you and your colleagues is revamping the U.S. voting mechanism." For city council members, we're going to do this for the U.S. "It is broken. Too many citizens don't trust the voting system. Without faith in the voting process, there's no respect for elections. Without credible electeds, there's no respect for the governing structure. Without respect for the government, the people are left to their own devices to be heard. With people devising their own ways of expression, anarchy." Surprisingly, this was not written recently. It was written in 2005. Another letter was from a young lady who wrote to complain about the houses that were built in Spanish Hills because they destroyed the habitat that used to be the coyotes' habitat, who were now dying off. The way they were dying off was that they were being driven into the street in Las Posas Estate and getting hit by cars. She had a solution. She saw lots of empty lots in town and asked us to turn them into coyote sanctuaries. In 1997, a man from Las Vegas, Nevada wrote to us, starting out, "Members of the Camarillo City Council." And this is quotes from here on out. "You people and other places like Pasadena, California, most be real anti-animals and dumb. Yes, more people should and may just move out of cities like yours. No pigs. First, pigs doesn't make noises, nor does they stink. And they are smarter, much smarter than humans. I doesn't have pigs, but I sure know pigs. And humans is one of the dirtiest on earth. Many never..." I'm sorry. "Many never take baths at all." This was in response to our passing an ordinance that didn't allow potbelly pigs in town.
Oscar Mayer.
Another letter addressed to the mayor began, "Dear Madam, this is in reference to the letter that was sent to your good office dated 2/10/98. And we would like to express our sincere apology for the incorrect salutation. We thought that Mr. Mike Morgan is the incumbent mayor of the city. Our dear Madam Mayor, thank you for your time and more power to you. Sincerely yours, the occupants." So I was curious. I looked up the previous letter, which was just addressed, "Dear Sir." What did it say? "We would like to inform your good office, although we didn't receive any notification whatsoever beforehand in regards to the Camarillo Municipal Code dated January 28th, 1998, and to that effect as has already been complied with, all due respect thereon. In the future, please send us a brochure or a copy of any new ordinances that are being enacted by the City Council as a reference thereof. It was signed, confidentially yours, the occupants, with no address." The letter that got me to start my Weird Letters file arrived in 1990. The 9-page letter was from Jerry Dawkins, who was serving time in a Georgia prison. He said, "As requested by numerous sources around the world, enclosed you will find a certified copy of my birth certificate to clearly affirm that my father's name is Jesse, the true father of Jerry Dawkins, in parentheses, David. See Bible 1 Samuel 16, verses 11 and 12. The two verses gives a perfect description of Jerry Dawkins, David. Jerry Dawkins, King David, is also the future ruler, the ancient of the days, and the hair of his head like pure wool. See Bible, Daniel 7, verses 9 and 10, and Revelations 1, verse 14. See also the Holy Quran 2, 251, and Holy Quran 4, 163. He went on to ask for help in getting out of prison since he was the future ruler, King David. The letter was addressed to King, I'm going to butcher this name, King Aziz Abulun Fad, the royal Dewan in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with copies, this is a quote, to worthy dignitaries throughout America and around the world on 6 continents, unquote. I was flattered to be considered one of those worthy dignitaries around the world. Then there was a 6-page letter from Carolyn Kropp in Chelsea, Michigan, who wrote to us in 1998. Mrs. Kropp considered herself a certified seer who could tell the Justice Department the hows and whys of whatever they needed to know hows and whys of. She had sent them information on a Swissair plane crash, about a mafia satanic crew, and other events she read about in the papers. What did the Justice Department do? They increased the torture on her so she could not sleep. She wanted us to prevent the Secret Service from torturing her. How about the letter from Sandy Webb, mayor of Simi Valley, to Michael Bradbury, the district attorney of Ventura County in 1997, chastising him for promoting an ordinance to regulate going out of business sales. She wrote, and from here on it's a quote, "Isn't it bad enough that so many companies go bankrupt because of high taxes and excessive government regulations? Now you're demanding a $298 permit and a $149 annual fee, plus inventory reports and advertising time limit and other restrictions to make absolutely certain that a business really, really has been driven over the edge and isn't just faking it. I don't think so. Your proposed ordinance would require a permit before any liquidation sale could even be announced and would allow the government to refuse a permit because of insufficiency of information set forth in the application. But why stop there? Why not license all marketing promotions before the fact? Shouldn't we require a permit for government pre-approval before any potentially misleading ad is mailed out or published or broadcast? After all, why bother our heads with that quaint old-fashioned idea like freedom of speech?" Unquote. I wish she'd told him how she really felt. More recently, the mayor of Camarillo received an email dated January 4th, 2021, demanding $100,000 be sent to PayPal account, adding, quote, if you won't send it, we'll organize several explosions in crowdy places of the city during this month. Quick deal, guarantees no problems in the city. I guess we figured we didn't have any crowded places and weren't very worried about that one. Elections bring letters too. In 2010, this letter came to City Hall after my shoulder surgery. "Hi, old girl with the bad wing. How about..." This was addressed to the mayor. "How about this for an idea to promote your candidacy for another term on the Camarillo City Council? You, me, and Waddles, my faithful dog, go for a stroll sometime along the length of Ventura Boulevard and meet each of the shopkeepers as we go along." All of this man's other letters were very hateful about the police harassing him for drunk driving. One woman wrote several times in 1987, as a brand-new council member, I took an interest in her complaint about her neighbor, whom she said was poisoning her and her husband with caustic material. Her proof was stuff in her backyard, but she brought some of it to show us at a council meeting when she talked. I took an interest, and Ray Abbott, the police chief, went to her house, looked around, and sent samples to the lab. But it was left to me to inform her that the brown stuff on her lamp was rust, and the white stuff was mildew. 9 years later, she complained that a neighbor's child was discharging an air rifle and the bullets were landing in her yard. After an investigation, I had to write to say that the Camarillo Municipal Code does not prohibit the use of Nerf guns. Another woman left me shaking my head. I was shopping at Vaughn's, and she came up and started talking. I wondered how she knew so much about me and my ideas on city issues when she looked at me and said, "You don't have any idea who I am, do you?" I said, "No." And she said, "But I watch every council meeting on TV." Council meetings have had their share of oddities, too. One angry guy in 1992 shouted, "I want you guys who make the big bucks to know." And I interrupted him, saying I had no idea what he considered big bucks. But at that time, we made $400 a month, and if he thought that was big bucks, just keep on going. But if he didn't, please tone it down a bit. He stared at us and said, "400 a month?" All of us nodded. He turned around and left, and we never did find out what his complaint was. How about the guy who protested a water rate increase? He said he had 12 kids, all of whom needed showers and baths, and it was unfair. We should charge by family size. I asked him if Vaughn's gave him a discount for food because he had a large family. He kept going about needing water rates based on family size. Finally, I asked how much water he used a month. He checked his recent bills in his hand, and he said 6. I told him that was within Tier 1. He left very happy, but I'm still wondering how all those kids got showers and baths on 6 units of water per month. One night, we held a public hearing because a man appealed a decision. I saved the best for last. A man appealed a decision to allow a house to be built on an empty lot next door. About 50 people showed up, none of whom looked like Camarillians to me. Men wore suits, ties, and felt hats. Women wore fancy dresses and little hats with little flowers sprouting out. Few people dress up to come to council meetings, and nobody wears a hat. Several people spoke before a guy swaggered up and said he was Prince Jordan Tyson, a direct descendant of Andrew Jackson and other famous people. One woman wouldn't tell us her name because she didn't want to get spam and phone calls. The hearing lasted about an hour. We finally denied the appeal, allowing the house to be built. They all got up and left. During the staff report for the next public hearing, Prince returned and spoke to the police chief, who came directly to the podium and said we needed to hear what he had to say. He very sheepishly said that after thinking about it, we needed to know that neither he nor any of the other speakers cared anything about the issue. And being a direct descendant of Andrew Jackson, he felt that he shouldn't have influenced our decision, which he really didn't. We still allowed it. But then he asked us to retract his statement. We asked why. He said that all of those people had been hired by Crowds on Demand, who bussed them from Hollywood and paid them $100 a pop. We were astroturfed. And my sources for this are the letters in my file and my memories.
It's a rather large file.
About that thick.
All right. With that, we've gone through everything on our agenda for this time. What time is it? Lost track of time. 6:33. We do have our 7 o'clock, where we have public comments, and then after which we'll adjourn. And at that time, we will adjourn in the memory of Mr. Don Wanch. So at this time, we will recess until 7 o'clock.
if I'm understanding. Finally approved when they go. I think there's zones around here, as I understand.
All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting of the Camarillo City Council for our 5 o'clock session. 5 o'clock, Jesus, man, 7 o'clock, where am I? Got in my time machine. All right, 7 o'clock. Let the record reflect that all council members are present. All we have on our agenda for 7 o'clock is public comments. So I'm going to assume that's what everyone here is for. I got all these cards. So we'll launch right into public comments. I'll just speak the rules for everyone. I'll call everyone up. I have a whole list of public comment cards. I'll call everyone up in the order in which I've received them. I'll ask you to come to the podium. Please just state your name, speak into the microphone so we and everyone at home can hear you. There'll be a clock. There's a clock underneath me, and I have a clock underneath you. That'll count down, starting with 3 minutes. At 1 minute, it'll beep, and you'll see a yellow light. Don't let that distract you. Continue on through. And then once it gets down to 0, I'm just going to ask you to conclude your comments so that way we can keep it fair for everyone, and we can move on to the next speaker. All right, with that, we will start with, if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Wendy Elis? Elis? Elis. Okay. Helis. No, I got it. See what I'm talking about?
Hi there.
Hi. What's your
My name is Wendy Eels.
Eels, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
All
okay.
right, thank
like
you.
Eagles with no G. Hi there, council members. Thank you for allowing us this time. My name is Wendy Eels, as I stated. For the last 30 years, I have owned and managed a property on Calle Quetzal in Camarillo. Calle Quetzal, as some of you may not know, is a small, remote street at the end of Pancho Road on the way to the cemetery. You would have to be looking for it to find it. Being a remote street in an industrial area, Calle Quetzal might not mean much to you, but it does to the small businesses who operate there and their employees. I represent 4730, 4740, 4750, 4760, 4770, and 4780 Calle Quetzal. Over the last few years, motorhomes have started popping up on Calle Quetzal, not as much on any of the other 5 streets that are in the industrial area. The number of motorhomes has varied over the last few years and peaked at 11 motorhomes and their accompanying vehicles during COVID. We are now at 4 motorhomes and their accompanying vehicles. The remaining pseudo-authorized encampment shows no sign of moving. By that, I mean that the cobwebs continue to grow in between their tires and the illegal dumping of sewage into the storm drain continues as well. I want to commend Alonzo Ramirez of the City Manager's Office and Deputy Jason Havelka, who have met with me multiple times to discuss the issue, and as well as other city representatives who have been responsive, very responsive, and I really appreciate it, but basically have said there is only so much we can do. Our hands are tied. Deputy Havelka has been diligent and determined, and I truly appreciate his efforts, but there seems to be one group of motorhomes that simply will not leave. I have a hard time accepting that. There has to be a solution to this problem that includes a family of 7, 5 kids and 2 adults living in a motorhome in an industrial area. I have a heart. Believe me, I am actively involved in fundraising for philanthropy supporting fragile families, out-of-home youth, AKA foster kids, and children experiencing homelessness. There has to be a solution that involves running water, electricity, and a legal sewage system for this family. But I don't want it to be across the street, literally in the street, from the businesses that operate on Calle Quetzal. Several of the business owners did not feel comfortable attending tonight's meeting because they are afraid to be seen at this meeting by the group of people living in motorhomes across the street. They have been repeatedly intimidated and harassed by some of these people whenever they enter or exit their businesses. I am concerned that my tenants will not be renewing their leases in Camarillo and subsequently will choose to move to another city that has more creative solutions to solve this type of problem. I hope you can help me, the businesses and employees on Kai Ketzel, and the family members to find a solution that works better for all of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Peter Owen, you are up, and Carlos Landros, Angel, you are on deck.
Hi, my name is Peter Owen, and I was asked to come over here to speak about the red curbs on Aviador and Wood Road by the business owners. And these red curbs have eliminated, they estimate, between 70 and 90% of the available parking. There's one company that has 40 employees. They don't want to see them wrongfully terminated by the city because they can't park and therefore can't come to work. And I would ask the city, if somebody came along unannounced, no forewarning, with a bucket of red paint and eliminated 90% of the parking in Old Town, how long would you have in Old Town? I don't think it'd be there very long. So I have been asked by these business owners, at least 15 of them, to come to the city council, which they have absolutely no trust in whatsoever. They don't believe anything will be accomplished, but I convinced them that it might be worth a try. They want to know how to abate this situation. We all understand that when you're coming out of a driveway or an alleyway, a 5 or 6 foot clearance on each side is necessary and reasonable, but you don't need 75 feet on each side of the driveway to get out of the driveway. It's absolutely absurd. Okay, so I would like to be pointed in the right direction, who I can speak to, and how we can come to a mutually agreeable and workable situation on Aviador and Wood Road. Obviously, there have been parking problems, but that's because there was no marking whatsoever, and it was haphazard at best. In other words, you might have a fire hydrant that's painted red on 1 foot on one side and 75 feet on the other, which is what we have now. Formerly, we had 3 fire hydrants with no marking whatsoever. People just park in front of it. They didn't know where to park. It was never enforced. I paid a ticket on one once. Okay, but there has to be a reasonable and workable solution that both parties can agree on, but they have to be informed. They have to be part of the conversation. You can't just come up and slap it in their face and say, you don't have a choice. You've got nowhere to turn. You don't belong here. Bang. That's how they feel. And obviously, I think you would be very uncomfortable too. You wouldn't want to come into the council meeting and find all the doors locked. Meet in the parking lot. Come on. Nobody wants this, okay? So I would like to find a solution for these people, and I would like to present it to them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Well, we have your information, so we'll certainly have staff follow up with you. Carlos Landros, Angel, you are up, and Ryan Williams, you are on deck. Did Carlos leave? All right, well, if Carlos comes back, and I'll put him to the back of the line. So Ryan Williams, you are up, and Debbie Garrison, you are on deck.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Ryan Williams. I come here tonight, I'm the facility manager of a business here in Camarillo called SAGE, acronym for Service to Achieve Growth and Empower. We currently provide services to independent living services, supported living services, respite services, applied behavioral analysis services, and substance abuse and recovery services, along with employment and educational goals for persons with disabilities within the community. Oh, is that better?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Sorry. So what I'm here for today is basically we opened our doors in July of 2006, and Our mission is to serve all people with developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities in their communities as individuals with services tailored to their needs, honoring their choices and empowering life quality and their independence. 16 years ago, Sage started out as a pretty modest company, as most do when you're starting out, and has grown to approximately 1,000 persons served and employees combined. So we serve the county of Ventura in particularly, are venturing outside of it a little here and there. In August of 2020, we moved from Ventura to Camarillo off at the properties that we purchased at 1305 Del Norte Road out here in Camarillo at the corner of Central and Del Norte. If anybody doesn't know where that is, it's right next to Harley because we hear them all day long. So, what I'm really here for to ask the council to consider is to put on the agenda at some point considering a bus stop out there in that area. I thought there was a bus stop out there when we moved, and we came to find through some research with VCTC and also the Infrastructure Transportation Committee in Camarillo that it wasn't a fixed route. It was just a transfer point for cities in between Oxnard and Camarillo, I believe, for dial-a-ride and access buses. Considering all the folks that we serve and the staff that utilize the public transit within our agency, it would greatly benefit everybody that we support. Part of what we do is mobility training and supporting those individuals with obtaining monthly bus passes to be as independent as possible. Whether this becomes a possible fixed route remains to be seen. I'm sort of investigating all that now, trying to go in the right direction, and whether or not it's with the city of Camarillo or with its VCTC for a regional bus stop instead. So that said, in conclusion, I'm just really trying to advocate and support the individuals within our community that have disabilities with being able to be as independent as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. All right. Debbie Garrison, you are up, and Jeanette Bradfield, you are on deck.
Sorry for the short people. The opposed Camarillo Springs building team is again appearing in chambers to ask that this city council take a vote and defeat the Camarillo Springs Golf Course project proposed by NUI. It had been over 5 years of NUI's misrepresentations to this council and homeowners. Commitments made by NUI were ignored and unfulfilled, along with the willful manipulation of the Camarillo City Council. Residents of Camarillo Springs live in a geographically designed bowl. In the early afternoon of 2018, Camarillo Springs was under mandatory evacuation due to concerns that the hill fire approaching Newberry Park would come over the hill. Because of the panicked rush, some homeowners were in bumper-to-bumper traffic inside our gates trying to get out. Some people had to wait in line for up to 2.5 hours. The cause was too many cars. All cars had to go through the pinch point at Camarillo Springs Road and Adair Lane. If the NUI plan is approved, the first phase of 248 homes will add at least 500 more cars to the traffic jam. Speculation turned to fear as the Paradise, California fire had 84 deaths occurred within the same period of time while they tried to evacuate. Fortunately, none of our homes caught on fire. Unlike the 2013 Camarillo Springs fire, the 2018 fire would not be extinguished so easily. In the 2013 fire, there were no other fires in the area, so the fire department could use all of its resources. In 2018, fire was raging all over Ventura County, and the firefighting resources were limited. There were too many cars and only one way out. We are not just referring to property, but to many lives as well. How do you mitigate a human life? What more do we need to know tonight from NUI that we didn't know on April 13th? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrison. Jeanette Bradfield, you are up. And Anna Hindle, you are on deck.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Jeanette Bradfield. My husband and I live on the fairway of Camarillo Springs Golf Course, as well as on the lake towards the floodwater drain into Caneo Creek. If the new Urban West project were to move forward, and assuming their proposed lake were to be built, our homes would still be in a similar lake. Our homes will still be in the flood zone. As of the last flood plan submitted by New Urban West leaves 16 to 26 homes in the floodwater. This is forever. If Mr. Richards decides to close the golf course and turn it into weeds, we don't see there will be much difference than what we see today. Much better than construction for many years. What will change for us and all of Camarillo Springs will be the absence of many features which made us choose our homes. Gone will be all the other ponds, which has served as a migratory oasis for a multitude of small and large waterfowl for decades. Gone will be the fox, the lions, the deer, the porcupines, coyotes, and golfers. Do you think this makes us a good steward of the environment and the guardian of the species, relying on our protection and companionship? For many, many years, contaminated dust will blow into our property, and the years of construction will invade our peace, quiet, and health. Our beautiful view of the mountains will be gone. We'll be facing a 10 to 15-foot high earthen pads with 1- and 2-story homes. Please stop this insanity. With the election of the new council members, this is just going to delay a decision that should have been made years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anna Hindle, you are up. And Susan Murphy, you are on deck.
I'm Susan Murphy.
Oh. Are you taking?
I'm going to speak for both of us.
Okay.
Okay.
You still get 3 minutes.
Thank you. My comments are very short and to the point. Be bold, be brief, be gone, right? First of all, I want to say I wish that this NUI project would be a success, that it would be an enhancement to our community. But in light of what happened a few years ago with the hillside in Camarillo Springs, many of us here were there for that event and went through a lot of the unintended consequences that occurred as a result of the decisions that were made so many decades ago. So I'm hopeful that I can ask a few questions. No answers are required. I just want to ask the questions and raise them for consideration. Will the developers oversee the construction of a quality product that will be sustainable and marketable in the current regulatory climate? Will the buyer be able to purchase it at the current rate of interest or at a rate into the future? Will the builder receive supplies and materials in timely and reliable manners? The last thing I want to say is, what kind of a city do we want to live in? I was born in Los Angeles. I raised my kids in the San Fernando Valley because I wanted to get out of LA. And then I came here to this beautiful community after the kids were grown and gone. And I love this whole county, and I love the people that are here, and I love living here. And I just don't want to see what happened in Los Angeles and the Valley come here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Jerry, is it Swenson? You are up, and Cheryl Harwood, you are on deck.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Swenson. This is my first time here, and I'd like to say, yeah, I look sharp up there. I'm here from Camarillo Springs. I live across the street from our construction clubhouse. It's been on construction for 7 years, 6 years. We've been trying to stop this urban growth. I've been living in dust for 5 years. And I can't take it anymore. You're gonna put all these homes over there in which it's gonna be 10 years till they're done, probably, the way things go. I've been in construction, delays. And then you're gonna open up ground with old oil wells. You know, it just don't work. Gotta rethink this and get a vote on there for no. We don't need it there. It's ridiculous. They just want money. And we're there for retirement. You know, I worked hard all my life and I want a retirement. I want to be where I can enjoy it. The deer. I saw a 3-point on each side buck last night going across my hill. You talk about gorgeous. You're gonna drive them all away. We're not gonna have any more of that, what you call open space. It's gonna be gone. Next, the farmers, the fish, the people, the animals, you know. Just reconsider it and get this vote on the way. We've been waiting for years, you know. I hear it all the time. Please get the vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Cheryl Harwood, you are up, and Ken Simon, you are on deck.
Good evening, Council. I came without notes because I actually want to talk to you. And what I want to talk to you about is emergency response and emergency evacuation. And to make my point, I'm going to bring out a personal story. And that's the death of my husband. My husband, Warren Harwood, 6 years ago, fell on our driveway, and he hit his head and was bleeding profusely. Paramedics were called. EMT arrived 40 to 45 minutes later. That's an extreme amount of time. Usually it's 20 to 25, maybe 30. My husband did not make it. He had bled out by the time they came. I was with him those 45 minutes. I watched it. It was my screensaver for a year. And what I want to say to you is with the 2 hours and a half that it takes for emergency evacuation, and with EMTs coming in, and they will come in because we are mostly a senior community, many people, their homes are their piggy bank. They don't have savings. That's where they live. They don't have options to, oh, let's move tomorrow. That is not on the books for them. And what I want to say is if we have this extreme emergency response problem, because of the bull that was talked about earlier, and the fact that there's only one good entrance, and that's from the 101, and many times you've been boggled on the 101 too. You know how there's areas where it does not flow that well. In an emergency, we are going to be like sitting ducks because we are required to stay and let EMTs pass. If the fire goes the wrong direction, and the last fire was 1 football a second, it was going that fast. How lucky do we feel? I want to leave you with the remarks of my late husband and his mentor, who was superintendent of Baxter Ward. And they always asked themselves one question before they voted. What is the right thing to do? Just tell me, what is the right thing to do? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Harwood. Ken Simon, you are up, and Jennifer Jones, you are on deck.
Good evening, Council. I'm here on behalf of the opposed Camarillo Springs group. I live almost as close as one possibly could to the oil well or oil issue at hand. I've spent about the past 20 years as a professional geologist in the state, working at contaminated sites from Eureka to San Diego. We typically look at a site and we look at cleaning it up to current standards for the state or at a minimum the federal government. That's typically parts per billion of certain contaminants like benzene and other hydrocarbons. What I'm living next to is essentially a toxic pit of oil that no one seems to want to handle. And from all I can tell, that this developer is holding the city hostage with that and other issues. So I would just, there's so many issues that that pertain to this project: the flooding issue, evacuation. I think if you take any single issue, you can debate it and say, oh, you can make you can try and figure out a single issue. But if you take the myriad of issues, there's no way in good conscience that the council could possibly vote for this project. I've studied the environmental impact report. There's many questions there. I don't even know where that stands. So I don't want to take up any more time, but I just want to let you all know that the proper vote for this is definitely a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Jennifer Jones, you are up, and Drew Thompson, you are on deck.
Hello, thank you for giving us this chance to speak. I'm also with the Oppose group, and I don't live right there. I live in Mission Oaks, but I drive that area, and I'm a birder, and I ride my bike by Calle Quetzal, so I knew the area she was talking about. And so I'm going to read what I have to say. Let me start by clarifying that although approval by Ron Kester's advisor committee has been reported in many ways throughout the years, there is no approved flood control plan for the Camarillo Springs Golf Plan. Much attention has been aimed at the Conejo Creek causing the flooding on the golf course, but little has been told about the other equally unpredictable and forceful flooding source. Camarillo Springs is built, as others have said, in a geographical bowl. From the mountaintops of the bowl come torrents of rainwater and debris that divert onto the golf course. This turns into an uncontrollable river flowing fast and deep until it reaches the flats of the golf course floodplain. The water there has nowhere to go. There's also the issue, as others have said, about the native wildlife and its habitat. The floodplain includes many ponds fed by springs, which are ancient homes to many species of birds, fish, and frogs, some of which are endangered species, and flocks of migrant birds such as egret, geese, pelican, and duck, and more have made the floodplain and its pond a layover in their migratory path for decades. Many native mammals live in the surrounding slopes and bushes of Cam Springs. Deer, they graze there, and as this gentleman said, the beautiful buck he saw recently, bobcat, coyotes, and you might discover like a fox sitting over there and hanging out, and as you go on your evening walk and see coyotes. And I'm personally a fan of birds of prey. They're my absolute favorite, and in that area you'll often see hawks and owls, and I've often seen turkey vultures in the area right at the base of the 101, looking around for their rats and mice to eat. So let's do our part to maintain these fragile ecosystems, both for their own benefit as well as the benefit of our children, so they can continue to observe and preserve these natural habitats. Approving GPA 20172 will result in flood complications and seriously disrupt our precious native wildlife. What more do we need to know from NUI that we didn't know April 13th? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Drew Thompson, you are up, and Max Fowler, you are on deck. Is Drew Thompson here? All right, Mr. Drew Thompson goes to the back of the line if he comes up. So Max Fowler, you are up, and Gabe Magyar, you are on deck.
Hi, my name is Max Fowler. I live on the Country Club Village on the 7th fairway of the Camarillo Springs Golf Course. Pending for your approval is GPA 2017-2, which is a request to change the zoning for about 39 acres of the Camarillo Springs Golf Course from restricted residential to residential development. Only this change would allow the housing tract to be built on the acreage as requested by NUI. The area requested is part of a much larger and seasonally active flood zone stretching into the neighboring farmland and down through the water reclamation plant and onto the community college. To secure the zoning change, first and foremost, the developer must provide a flood plan, proving to protect the new homes as well as the existing homes in Camarillo Springs. They have not done so. We don't know how long the city council wants to dance the fandango with Newey, but without a secure plan, the project is dead, and this sitting council should be the one to bury it today. This afternoon, you were sent via email an official rainfall history for Camarillo. Whether you're a global warming investor or not, history is the best forecaster. Using the term 100-year or 500-year floods is misleading. As a proponent to the project suggested on April 13th, if it only floods every 100 years, we should just plan to rebuild every 100 years. Mega floods happen regularly in Camarillo Springs. Ask the homeowners with their wet feet. We didn't even have a rain gauge in Camarillo Springs till after the 1998 flood. The aquatic engineers don't have enough factual information to work from. On a more personal note, I don't want the wildlife to suffer. I have a great deal of sympathy for them. Unlike developing an open field next to a freeway, the golf course has dozens of species of birds and animals that rely on it either partially or fully for their survival. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Gabe Magyar, you are up, and Brian Morse, you're on deck.
Honorable council members, my name is Gabriel Magyar. I have 2 quick points to make. Number 1, the council needs to make a decision on the golf course proposal as soon as possible. Our community has been very stressed because of the uncertainty about the potential construction in our neighborhood. Please make a decision soon. Number 2, the golf course is in terrible condition. Even the owners had to admit that the course is dilapidated. It is the responsibility of the owners to fix the golf course, and it is the responsibility of the city to make sure that the owners fulfill their obligation. Several months ago, the council instructed staff to look into the conditions of the course, but looking did not rectify the situation. Please instruct your staff to enforce the existing city rules and force the owners to bring the golf course up to standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morris, you are up. And John Olache, I'll probably mispronounce that, but you're going to be on deck.
Hello, council members. A few days ago, I was thinking, my goodness, this might be the last chance that we get to meet as this council. And so I thought we wouldn't want to miss a chance, so we came out tonight. On April 13th, Councilmember Tony Tremblay made a motion for the council to quickly schedule a vote for GPA 2017-2. I and many of our teammates were in the chamber that night, and we were relieved, overjoyed, and shocked that we had witnessed the reemergence of common sense in our community. Thank you, Councilmember Tremblay, for the moment. Within less than 2 weeks, Councilmember Tremblay paused his motion. A revised flood control plan had been quickly completed and delivered by Newey, and Ron Richards had also repeated his threat to the council that he would close the golf course if this project was defeated. We reviewed the revised flood control plan, and again, in no way did it satisfy the needs as described by the council. Last week, I spent 6 hours on Zoom consulting other Richards and Newey project, being victims of the same threats and the same HOA advisory strategy. They are now victims of the post-contract phase. As per Newey, it's now necessary that the original contract be replaced with more homes and more golf course must be destroyed. Just sign here. It's been over 5 months since April 13th, so why hasn't the vote occurred? Is the vote sliding down on the schedule until after the 2023 City Council is seated? I've been told that some council members prefer to wait to make sure Ron Richards and Newey's exhaust their efforts. If by then the vote is no, they are less likely to sue the city for not giving them a fair shake. If you follow their strategy at other projects, you can be darn sure they're going to sue the city no matter what you do. GPA 2017 project plan is faulty and incomplete, and a new EIR is pointless. We don't need 248 plus homes to destroy prime recreation space. So why not do the right thing and vote this project dead before delaying the decision for another 12 to 18 months? Let's get it done tonight. A special note to Charlotte Craven. We would like to thank Councilmember Craven for her service these many years. Councilmember Craven is a wealth of knowledge and common sense that will be missed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. And John, is it Olachay?
Olachay is fine.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and my great opposition family here. Don't know you all by name, but soon we will. And to those who are not, good evening. I don't really have a whole lot of notes written down, other than that I speak from the heart. And right now, I just want to let everybody know that I'm truly opposed to this. I bought my forever home. It's my retirement, my forever home, where my children and grandchildren are to come over and visit for Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, or any time they want. But it will soon be a place where you can't really call a home. It'll be full of dust, dirt, demolition of the local grounds. I've seen way too much of that. I'm a veteran. I've been in combat. I want to stay home. I want to be in a nice home. I don't want it tore apart and polluted because of somebody's greed. One of the biggest questions, and I think the only question I want to ask you, is after this is sold to the committee, and if you say yes, who is going to be financially responsible for any floods or any fires that are caused and may cause homes to burn or people to be killed in any which way or form, whether it be because of the traffic jams or the fire, that are caused because we've got way too many people in that area and we can't egress properly. Newey's just going to walk away and leave you with the bill. And actually, it's going to leave it to us, the taxpayers. Don't put that financial burden on me, on you, on all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but I know that you're all very much in favor of what you're here for. There just might be somebody else out there. We don't want anybody to feel intimidated because it's public comment time. So we always ask that you don't clap or boo.
Thank you very much. And I have two people at the back of my list. Drew Thompson, I presume he hasn't come back into the room. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Williams, did Carlos come back? Says Carlos. Carlos, do you want to speak? Yes, sir. All right. Have at it, sir.
Good evening, council members, mayor, city manager, and city attorney. My name is Carlos Landeros Angel. I'm a son of Ventura, city of Ventura. I'm an employee of Sage Services. I'm also a Ventura Kiwanis Club member, and just a community advocate. I'm involved with a lot of different organizations, including a Ventura County Office of Education, where I serve children with special needs as well. With my role in Sage Services, I'm developing a program called Sage Heroes Program, where we'll be making community service accessible to people with disabilities, and the work that we do at Sage, and anybody that works in this field, we understand that it's so important to provide independence and a quality of life to those that are underserved. It's so important that they have the ability to gain independence, to seek the services that provide them with the quality of life that Sage Services provides. I'm asking you to be on board and supportive with us in our advocacy towards getting a regional bus stop near Sage Services. This will allow all adults with disabilities that we serve to have access to our services, which is pretty important for their quality of life. I'm also I'm with Kiwanis Club. I'm initiating a nationwide after-school bike challenge club, so I'll probably be having conversations with you when that comes. I'm piloting one in Ventura, Oxnard, and Port Hueneme, and then we're going to continue on. That's a side note. Anyhow, I would like to, continuing forward, I would be inviting other Kiwanis clubs, since we serve adults with disabilities, to also sign this petition as well. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great evening.
You as well, Mr. Landeros Angel. Thank you very much. And I am all out of public comment cards. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to have an impromptu speech moment? Nope, seeing no one come up. We don't have anything else on our agenda. So this time, all we're going to do is adjourn unless, are we good? Yep, okay. You want to say? Yeah, did you want to say a few words, Kevin? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I had a really good personal friend of mine, a war hero, two-term city council member, Don Wanch, passed away 10 days ago. And when I was fortunate enough to get elected to the city council in 1996, Don graciously accepted my offer to be a planning commissioner. And he did that for about 4 years, and then in 2000, Don was elected to the city council and served as mayor 2 years and served on the council for 12 years. And I know Charlotte and most of us up here knew Don, Tony, real well. Don had a great sense of humor, and that's a real asset if you're a council member, to have a sense of humor. But what a lot of people don't know about Don is that he was a Marine Corps pilot. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he received 2 Purple Hearts and a Distinguished Flying Cross. And the really great thing about Don with that is that he never really wore it on his sleeve. He was very proud to serve his country, but he respected everybody else. And I want to do a quote from Don because I think it kind of paints a picture of how he was. And he was talking about his aviation training. And he said, once I completed aviation training, I realized that I get sick brushing my teeth on the water. So I decided it would probably be in my benefit not to go on a boat. And that's why he became a pilot. So that's kind of what's Don's sense of humor here. He loved the city of Camarillo. He loved being a council member. He was extremely respectable to the public and to staff. And he was the epitome, in my opinion, of what it takes to be an effective council member. And he's going to be sorely missed for me and I think the city. And I appreciate the mayor and my council giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit about my friend and fellow council member, Don Wanch. Thanks for listening to me. I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for the time.
Absolutely. For Don, it's worth it.
I would.
Yeah, Mrs. Craven?
Yes, I also served with Don Wanch the entire time he was on the council. I found him to be honest, forthright, direct, and he had the city's best interest at heart, and that's what makes an excellent council member. And he was.
Well, we lost a really good guy. So we will close and adjourn in his memory.